We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas. We wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Ho, 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 says the fat man in the red outfit. Or so the story goes. For the Blakes, 2012 has been busy. And I think it gets busier as we get older. We had a slight extension put onto the back of the house, just extending the entry roof line so we could stay dry when trying to get indoors. Unfortunately, it hasn't rained much this year. Easter time, we spent walking in New Zealand along the Queen Charlotte track. This is with a group of like-minded people whom we've walked with before. The weather was picture perfect and the gourmet food ameliorated our sore feet. We had an extra treat by meeting my niece and her family whilst we were in New Zealand, plus my elderly uncle, who tried to convert us to Jehovah's Witness. After we returned from the trip, Mel and I picked up our newest family member from Grafton. He's a particularly handsome pup named Zephyr, and he proceeded to throw up all over me on our long drive home. When we got home, the older shepherds were a bit put out, and within a day, Zephyr was bitten on the face for poking his nose into Max's food bowl. This was the first of a few visits to the vet. He did settle into life with the two big dogs and insisted on being the alpha, and also proved a little tiresome to Sid and Max, and poor Zephyr wore the brunt of being put in his place. Work at this stage was hectic, although there were the early signs of a slowing down in the coal industry. Mel and the staff at JB decided to go for a little sailing trip up the Whitsundays in July. It was a collective celebration for the 60-year-olds at work. At night, poor Mal was relegated to the top deck. But I'll let anyone who's game to ask him why. In late August, we headed off to Canada via Manila. We didn't think we would be able to leave Manila as there was a typhoon in the China Sea and the place was flooding. Luckily, Steve, Mal's brother, got us to the airport. There were several delays and a misconnection, but we eventually arrived in Toronto. We were picked up by our friend Liz and taken out to where they live at Lakefield, which is about an hour and a half northeast of Toronto. They live in a really idyllic little village. And there they spoiled us. And when I say spoiled us, they really spoiled us. They filled us with food, alcohol, walking, touring. We went and saw Niagara, and they took us out to Algonquin, which is a fabulous place to visit. We camped there for a couple of days, and this is where they tried to show us the finer arts of canoeing and portage, two things that are totally alien to the Blakes. Anyway, that's a story in itself. But it was a really good way of learning that there's a total difference between kayaking and canoeing. Anyway, their hospitality and the time they spent with us was just amazing, and we're very thankful for them, and we hope to repay their hospitality. After we left Chris and Liz, we flew off to Thunder Bay, which is still in Ontario, but miles away. I couldn't believe it. Thunder Bay is at the top end of Lake Superior, and the lake is huge. Canada has no shortage of water. It was enough to make any Aussie salivate. We stayed at Emerson Harbour with Marg and Gary along with Leslie. These are friends we made whilst in Turkey last year. Again, we were overwhelmed with hospitality. We visited the local dump to see a black bear, kayaked, hiked, toured, and generally had a fun time with fabulous company. We also hope to repay their hospitality one day. From Thunder Bay, we flew to Fort Smith via Edmonton for the next leg of our journey. This was a 10-day canoe trip in the Northwest Territories. I admit to trepidation as we are inexperienced canoeists as opposed to kayaking, two totally different techniques involved for propulsion and steering. Our guide was a dyed-in-the-wool territory man. It is hard to describe the beauty of the area. Tundra, permafrost, sphagnum moss, and endless lakes, rivers and waterways. We landed on the Great Slave Lake in an Otter 8, packed to the gunnels with gear and excitement. Our fellow paddlers were a mix of experience and even less experience than us. We were the only foreigners, and the group were a welcoming bunch of Canadians. I would recommend such a trip for many reasons. Space, quiet, beauty, and not seeing another soul till the planes returned to pick us up. Wildlife was a bit on the scarce side, but the fishing was good, lake trout, and the northern lights are something else. But be prepared for the black flies. The little buggers actually take chunks out of your skin. We did a lot of hiking to find the wildlife. There's plenty of evidence, but we didn't see grizzly, moose or caribou. But we did get reasonably close to a muskox, a prehistoric creature looking like a hairy cow with big horns. I don't see us repeating this type of trip. It was exhausting and we forgot to take a hip flask. There's a lot to see in Canada and we will return. We flew on to Manila and stayed a few days with Steve and Fiona and their young family. After the quiet of the Northwest Territories, Manila was a total hit to our senses. People, humidity and smog. But we were glad to have visited. Again, we were spoiled with hospitality, and our thanks go to Steve, Thea and Nancy. The night we returned home, my dear mate Sid died. He waited for us, and it was a sad time for all concerned. We still miss his bad manners, pushy attitude and loyalty. It was also sad for Eddie and Mitch, who cared for the boys while we were away. It took a while to get our feet back on the ground. Work for Mal has slowed down considerably, and we expect the next year will be slower, but we will plug on. Our mothers have had their ups and downs this year, health-wise, but all in all, things are mainly unchanged. Mobility is an issue for Jenny, and memory an issue for Nola. Liam has had a big year. His course is going well, plus he won a major prize, which will see him jet off to Sydney for some sort of learning experience to do with fashion design. It's all a bit esoteric to us country bumpkins. But we have observed over this past year, Liam's self-confidence and self-assurance has been greatly enhanced, which is a bonus. Health-wise, we are good. Mal had 2 cataracts removed and now tells me the cloudiness in his vision has disappeared, which is a relief. Presently, we're waiting for rain. Our tanks are low and the gardener's turning up his toes. Our chooks are doing well, although Zephyr enjoys plucking their backside feathers. I think it's all to do with the taste. Hope to see you in 2013. Cheers, Mackie, Mal and Vicky. Kiss, kiss.